red, yellow, fleshy, thick, round, cherry. Tomatoes are certainly one of the most popular types of vegetables in gardens. Tomato growing has become challenging due to higher summer air humidity, which allows the development of diseases such as tomato leaf mold and tomato blight, especially in continental parts of Europe. This is why tomatoes grow best in gardens with frequent winds and lower humidity, or in a greenhouse, or when sheltered under a roof. With use of a greenhouse, we can also extend the season of tomato growing. Interestingly, tomatoes in their country of origin, South America, in areas without frost, they are perennial plants that live for many years. Tomatoes are sown once a year. In this course, we'll learn all about the growing tomatoes in a greenhouse, which happens a bit earlier than outdoors. The second option is our specialty, super early tomatoes from a greenhouse that are ripe already in April. We have made a special course for them so you can enjoy red, delicious early tomatoes in spring. Don't miss it out. In both cases, tomato seedlings are grown indoors or in heated spaces with sufficient light. When tomatoes are grown in a greenhouse, start the whole procedure about 20 days earlier than if we would sow them for an outdoor production. Thus, tomatoes that will be grown in a greenhouse are sown already in mid or late February, and if they're intended for growing in the open, they are sown in March. Tomato seedlings grow faster than bell pepper or aubergine seedlings and can also withstand cold temperatures from 2 to 5 degrees better. This time we will sow 6 varieties of tomatoes for greenhouse production. This is our main harvest, as all of the tomatoes will be grown in the greenhouse. We need around 20 bush tomatoes and 30 tall tomatoes. With additional 6 super early tomatoes currently on a windowsill, we will be able to fill the entire space in the greenhouse. Sow the seeds in one big seed tray and leave it in a warm place during germination. The ideal temperature for germination is 25 degrees Celsius, so it's best to place the tray on a windowsill above a radiator. Sow the seeds in a moist and warm substrate and cover them with 0.5 centimeters of dry substrate. Since tomato seeds germinate successfully in the dark, cover the seed tray, as this enables better germination due to more uniform humidity. Uncover it as soon as you can see the first sprouts, which can happen as early as 5 days, and move it to a place with more light. When the first leaves are open and horizontally aligned, and before the true leaves develop within 7 to 10 days of sowing, transplant the plants into medium-sized planting units with a quality substrate mixture. To ensure our plants grow strong enough, we bury them deeper, all the way down to the first leaves. To avoid damaging the roots, I recommend using a wooden or a plastic stick when pricking them out. Tomatoes need around 8 to 12 hours of light daily, so in this time of the year we place them under the lights. During the day, maintain a temperature of 18 to 22 degrees Celsius, while allowing the temperature to drop as low as 5 degrees Celsius at night, which young tomato plants can handle. Regular watering every other day is crucial for the seedlings. In about 20 to 30 days, Transplant the tomatoes to a larger planting unit to allow ample space for growth. Hello and welcome to Tomato Update. Today we are taking a look at our tomato plants, which are 35 days old. And at this stage, plants are ready for transplanting once again into larger pots or soil blocks. I recommend using a 10 by 10 by 10 soil block. It might seem large at first glance, but it will provide the tomatoes with enough food before the final transplant into the garden bed. We have made this procedure once already with super early tomatoes this season, but this time there are more tomatoes to be transplanted. We need a moist and warm substrate for the transplant, and we use a soil blocker to create the large soil block, which we then place on a tray. Transplanting is as simple as placing a smaller block into a larger one. This will ensure that the seedlings have ample space to grow and thrive. Here in the greenhouse, covered with garden fleece, temperature rarely falls below 5 degrees Celsius. Before they are transplanted into a greenhouse in late April or to an outdoor bed in mid-May, harden them off by placing them along a south-facing wall or a greenhouse for at least 4 days in order for them to adjust to outdoor temperatures, especially to night temperature fluctuations. This is especially important when the seedlings have been grown indoors under the lights. We have to be careful when exposing them to direct sunlight. On the first day, they should preferably be placed on a partly shaded location. Also keep an eye on them so they don't get sunscald on the first hour. This can be recognized by pale whitish blotches. After that, give them a maximum of 2 hours of direct sunlight per day and then gradually every day a bit more. When temperatures drop below 5 degrees Celsius, the seedling should be moved to a warmer place during the night. At Becoming Gardener, we apply extra heat in the greenhouse with an electric radiator during the night. Before transplanting tomatoes, they must be at least 20 centimeters in height. Prepare planting holes which correspond to the size of the planting unit, water them well, and transplant the seedlings vertically straight and no deeper. They can also be planted deeper by burying half of the seedling into the soil. In this case, pinch off the bottom leaves 1 week before the transplantation so that the wounds will have time to heal before the transplantation. At Becoming Gardener, we have tried both techniques and haven't noticed any differences in rooting speed and quality or quantity of the crop. If the weather was dry or in a greenhouse, water the entire surface of the tomato bed in advance. The soil around the seedlings can be covered with summer mulch, leaves, grass clippings, or straw immediately after the transplantation. We use a specific mulch, old clay tiles. They absorb extra heat, retain water, don't allow weeds to grow, and are a clean surface if the tomato plants or fruit touches the ground. Plant the seedlings with 70 centimeters of spacing between individual tomatoes. Plant them in no more than 2 rows, preferably in a zigzag pattern on a 100 centimeters wide bed. One large tomato plant needs at least 0.5 square meters of surface area. When sowing in 2 rows, we also consider garden paths as being part of this area. This ensures a good flow of air between them, makes it easier to prune them and harvest the crop. Cordon or tall varieties of tomatoes must be provided with a support in the form of a thin stakes or rods or a string. The string are an excellent choice in a greenhouses, where we can take advantage of the greenhouse frame where the strings are easily attached. All we have to do in order to support the tomatoes is to wind the plant around the string by hand, which is done much faster than tying it to a stake. Bush or dwarf tomatoes are varieties of tomatoes that do not need support or need minimal support with a stake, as they do not grow more than 80 centimeters in height. Spacing between plants of bush tomatoes can be smaller, around 50 centimeters, but this depends on the individual variety. Bush or tall tomatoes thrive when planted in large pots along a south-facing walls. When choosing pots, always choose 20 liters or preferably even bigger, as this will allow for the plants to get more nutrients. Use compost at least in the half of the total volume in the pot, because this reduces the need for watering, which is always higher in pots than in garden beds. Always maintain stable soil moisture around the plants in order to sustain a healthy microbiological activity in the soil. Tomatoes are known to handle longer dry periods, up to 2 months, very well without any watering, but problems may arise with healthy transfer of nutrients because activity is reduced in dry soils. Microorganisms are not active, and flowers are drying and falling off. Therefore, during hot summer days, keep the soil moist by watering it about once a week and covering with a mulch made of fresh grass clippings, leaves, or straw. Smaller greenhouses are watered manually, but if we have a lot of tomato plants, it's better to opt for a drip system in order not to water the upper parts of the plants. Pinch out the new side shoots on tall varieties throughout the growing season. A lot of cultivated plants form side shoots, including bell peppers, chili peppers, aubergines, cucumbers, pumpkin, physalis, watermelons, and melons, where these side shoots start to behave like stems. Side shoots start to grow between the main stem and the branch on the upper side of that stem and take on a roll of new stem, which results in dense growth, including several main stems. This should be avoided when growing tomatoes. Train tall tomatoes to form only one apex, which makes it easier to support with the plant using only a single string. Especially in a greenhouse, where we wind tomato plants around the string, we strive for a single apex. As soon as you spot a side shoot, remove it by hand or a finger knife. You don't need any scissors because the tissue is very soft. Even if you don't spot it immediately and it grows 10 centimeters or more, simply pinch it out. When tomatoes grow, tie them to the support stake, or even better, we wind them around the string. When the fruits begin to form and before they start changing color, start removing lower, older leaves gradually from the bottom up. The removal of side shoots and bottom leaves is what constitutes regular care during the main growing season of tomatoes, and this is carried out every 7 to 10 days. This ensures good air circulation for the plants. This technique serves us as particularly well later in the season when the tomatoes reach the top of the greenhouse and we start reducing its height by lowering the cleaned stem to the ground. If during lowering of the stem any unripe tomatoes would start touching the ground, place a board or a brick under it, because the tomato fruit touching the ground starts to rot quickly. When the plants grow to the top of the greenhouse, it's time to start lowering them together with the string to the ground so that the plant has gained room to grow upwards. We use a professional string holder which has a few meters of string wrapped around it. We have different varieties of tomatoes, and this Oak's Heart variety is a heavy fruit. We had experiences in the past where the stem broke because of the weight of the ripening tomato. We used to tie the fruit stem to the main stem, but now we use this plastic holder instead. Simply fix the fruit stem to another stem so it holds the weight. We are also in favor of pinching out too many tomato flowers, lowering the quantity of tomatoes but gaining better taste. On small varieties, we aim from 8 to 12 fruits. With bigger varieties, we leave 3 to 5 tomatoes. Sometimes the fruit stem will just go wild and will produce 30 flowers or even more, which would exhaust the plant. The tomato flower is self-pollinated, which means the wind itself is enough for pollination, or we shake the plant by hand and pollination occurs. Insects flying from flower to flower also are pollinators. If we really want to ensure the pollination of the tomato flowers, especially in closed greenhouses without windows, there's no wind and no insects, we simply shake the flower with our hand or use an old but still operational electric brush, which we place on the flower stem. Vibration will be enough for a successful self-pollination. Do not remove side shoots on bush tomatoes, as they grow lower in height and in the shape of a bush. And because of each peak tops off, it doesn't continue to grow in height, they need much less care than tall tomatoes, but they produce smaller fruits and also less of them. During the peak ripening stage, tomato plants need support so that the branches do not sag or even break under the weight of the fruits. Our bush tomatoes do fall over on the brick, which keeps the plants and fruits clean. Due to the lower air circulation around the stem and leaves of each plant, they are more susceptible to mold growth. Tomato is a plant that needs a lot of care. Because we are in regular contact with it, it's important that side shoots are pinched off and tomatoes nurtured on a fruit day, or conditionally also on a flower day according to the biodynamic calendar. This stimulates the plant to set up more flower buds and produce larger fruits. Before planting tomatoes, it's best to grow spinach, radishes, or lettuce on the same bed. These plants can also be grown simultaneously with tomatoes. Basil is the perfect companion for tomatoes, as are summer varieties of salads, endives, and chicory. They all like the mild shade of the tomato plants that provide shelter for them from the summer sun. If we plant tomatoes with even more space in between individual plants, the soil receives sufficient light for creeping plants such as pumpkins or sweet potatoes. After tomatoes, sow lamb lettuce, spinach, or any other autumn-winter vegetable. In the greenhouse, in August, plant various autumn-winter plants between the tomato plants. The most common tomato plant disease in home gardens is tomato blight. The spores of many fungi and molds are constantly present in the air. They only need a favorable environment for them to develop on a particular plant and infect it. For tomatoes, there are two molds that are potentially dangerous. The first is Alternaria solani, which causes the so-called early blight. A few hours of moisture on the leaves are enough, and it can occur early in the season, June or early July. This one is not as fatal as Phytophthora infestans, also known as potato blight or late blight, which occurs later. Late blight develops when two criteria are met, that is, when two limit values are reached. When the temperature is higher than 10 degrees Celsius for 2 days in a row, and the humidity is higher than 75% for 46 hours. This is on rainy days. Alternatively, these criteria also apply Temperatures are higher than 10 degrees Celsius for 2 days, and the humidity is higher than 90% for 11 hours straight for 2 nights in a row. These conditions occur on foggy nights. The disease therefore occurs due to high levels of humidity caused by rain or fog, and there is not enough wind to lower the levels of humidity. Our experience shows that when dealing with humid microclimates, prevention is the best strategy. That means growing tomatoes in a greenhouse or under a roof in order to reduce air humidity. Interventions with baking soda, lactic acid preparations, or natural chlorine-based desinfectations were almost always unsuccessful in treating late blight in our garden. During the peak growing season, there are a lot of other problems, especially when tomatoes start to ripen. During this time, the plant grows, it blooms, and the fruits ripen, everything at the same time, plus maturing of seeds within the fruit. The plant is exhausted, so it's crucial that all the necessary nutrients are at its disposal. Each individual nutrient deficiency manifests itself on the leaves or the fruit, with the most famous being calcium imbalance, when tomato fruits start becoming black at the bottom end. When there is a deficiency of certain elements, there is an abnormal coloration on the leaves. We at Becoming Gardener do not add individual elements, as our first focus is on universally fertile soil, which stimulates microbiological activity throughout the use of compost. The microbes in the soil make these nutrients, which are already present in the soil but inaccessible to the plant, available to plants. In the case of tomatoes, mycorrhizal fungi work perfectly because they enable, in symbiosis with the tomato plant, better absorption of nutrients and water. This fungi can be purchased as mycorrhizal powder and applied with the water or with a brush to the roots of the seedlings before transplanting them to the garden bed. We can delve deeper into the mineral aspects of fertilization, but for the most part, there is no need for this. In recent years, there has been an increase in the number of cotton bollworm caterpillars, which feed on various fruits, including ripe tomatoes. It's most active in summer months when it can eat the fruit completely. Partially affected fruit is still edible, but it deteriorates faster due to the damage incurred. In order to prevent the cotton bollworm from accessing the plants, it's best to place an anti-insect netting over the openings on the greenhouse. Tomatoes are self-pollinated, and as long as the wind passes through the openings on the netting, there is no problem with pollination. If tomatoes are grown in a greenhouse, they produce abundantly from June to October. If there is no frost, fresh and ripe tomatoes can also be harvested in November. The outdoor season is shorter from July to late September, maybe also in October. Fruits are harvested individually by hand. When the entire fruit cluster is harvested, cut off the truss with scissors at the main stem. If we have more than 30 plants, they should be harvested and stored for winter at least every 7 to 10 days during the months of July, August, and September. At the same time, we wind the stems around the string and remove the side shoots. Always harvest fruits that have matured the most. First tomatoes of the season are usually less sweet because they grew in colder weather, or maybe we as gardeners are a bit impatient and we harvest them when they still haven't reached their full maturity. Due to lower temperatures, the first tomatoes of the season can also be deformed and have rough patches. But this is just an aesthetic deficiency. Due to their popularity, tomatoes hardly need storage during the growing season, as they are mostly consumed fresh. We do not put them in the refrigerator, but we leave them at room temperature because this helps to develop their full taste. Any extra tomato fruits harvested regularly every 7 to 10 days are best saved for winter in the form of sauces. Today we'll be cooking our first batch of tomato sauce. We harvested a good batch of different varieties. We cut them to pieces and boil them. We are boiling them for at least 2 hours so that the water evaporates and the thicker sauce remains. Boiled tomatoes can have their skin and seeds removed to get a better quality of the sauce. When ready, we pour them in washed and warm jars with a clean lid and then cover with blankets to allow them to cool down slowly for at least 36 hours. Store them in the cellar or pantry. So no salt, no additives, just a little bit of olive oil on top and 100% tomatoes. Tomato sauce can also be frozen. If you want to dry the tomato fruits, this is best done with a pomodori pelati variety, Italian for peeled tomatoes, which has more flesh. The last tomato fruits of the season are harvested green, that means immature, and left to slowly ripen on a windowsill at room temperature. This way we can enjoy tomatoes for Christmas dinner or even later. Seed saving from tomato fruits present one of the easiest methods of seed saving because the tomatoes are self-pollinated and the varietal characteristics are easily passed on. There is no crossbreeding between different varieties as there is, for example, with courgettes and pumpkins. Moreover, with tomatoes we can enjoy a ripe fruit and it already contains physiologically ripe seeds. That is why there is no need to devote much extra care, time and space to extract the tomato seeds. All we have to do is to extract the seeds from the fruits and store them correctly. The recommendation is to save the seeds from fruits that show varietal character, grow well and ripen on the plant to their full maturity. If we have several plants from the same variety, it's best to choose the fruit that ripens on the plant and that best represents the characteristics of its variety in terms of growth, shape, and leaf mass. This attention during selection is important in order to store the best genetic material for the next generations, regardless of the method used for seed saving. How many fruits are needed in order to save enough seeds? For home gardening, it's more than enough to choose one fruit of each variety. The same goes for cherry tomatoes. Only the beef tomato variety usually contains fewer seeds, and in this case, we may have to collect 2 or more fruits. We can either dry the seeds on a paper. This is ready in 3 days and it's really simple since we only place the seeds on a paper and wait. The other option is to ferment the seeds. We have made both and both germinate exactly the same. Fermenting involves a bit more work, but we will go through this process together. Cut the selected tomato fruit in half and use a teaspoon to carve out the soft center fleshy part which contains seeds and put it in a bowl. Mix the contents and do not add or remove anything and just leave the bowl at room temperature for at least 3 days. You can leave it on the kitchen counter and during this time the content will start fermenting naturally. During the process, you can mix the contents slightly each day, but this is not necessary. Due to fermentation, the contents will change its smell, the color will fade, and a white layer might form on the surface. This is white mold, and it's not dangerous, and it's a part of the process. White mold is not a sign of something going bad. Just mix the contents and leave it as it is. After 3 days, the seeds are ready to be cleaned, selected, and dried. First, pour the fermented mass into a strainer and rinse under running water. Use your hands to remove any larger pieces of tomato flesh and then transfer the seeds to a new bowl with fresh water. If a seed floats on the water, remove it, as it is a faulty seed that will not germinate, or it has a lower potential for germination. Pour the water with seeds again onto a strainer and then put the seeds out on a surface where they will dry. As we come to the end of this tomato field course, I hope you found this journey from seed to fruit and from fruit to seed as fascinating as I have. Tomatoes with their vibrant colors and versatile flavors truly are the stars of any garden, always ready to liven up our salads and sauces. Remember, the joy of gardening lies not just in the harvest, but in the process of nurturing, growing, and observing. With that said, let's continue to explore the world of vegetables. Thanks for joining me, and let's keep becoming gardeners together.